She built a legacy in his shadow, only to dismantle it all to save it. This is the story of Elaine Wynn, a woman who shaped Las Vegas twice, once through vision and again through vengeance, and both times she did it on her own terms. In Las Vegas, she's known as the Queen, but that title doesn't reveal the price she paid to earn it or the things she had to destroy to hold on to it. This is a tale about two kinds of power, the one you create with your hands and the one you reclaim with your voice. It's about the woman who helped build the modern Strip, only to be erased from the boardroom of the company she co-founded. It's about a wife who stood by a visionary for decades, only to unearth the monster hiding beneath the legend. It's also about a billionaire who could have quietly stepped into retirement but instead ignited the most dramatic corporate battle in Vegas history, not out of vengeance but for something she valued more: accountability. Welcome to the legend of Elaine Wynn, a story that Vegas nearly forgot until she made sure they'd never overlook her again. Let's go back to the beginning. Not to the desert or neon lights, but to a middle-class Jewish household in New York City, where Elaine Pascal was born on April 28, 1942. Her father sold vacation packages to resorts, not the glamorous part of hospitality, but the grind, the phone calls, the commissions, and the hustle that keeps a family fed but doesn't make you wealthy. Her mother was a homemaker, traditional and devoted, the kind of woman who kept everything in order while the world spun around her. When Elaine was young, the family moved to Miami Beach. Surrounded by pastel Art Deco hotels and the rhythm of the Atlantic, Elaine learned an essential lesson: beauty sells. Experiences matter. People don't just want a room, they want a memory. She was sharp, always noticing what others missed. She went on to study political science at George Washington University, not because she wanted to run for office, but because she wanted to understand power, how it moved, who held it, and how to keep it once you had it. Then, during college, a blind date changed everything. His name was Steve Wynn. Fresh out of the University of Pennsylvania, he was ambitious, electric, and full of ideas. He had this energy about him, this belief that someone bold enough could remake the world. They married in 1963 when Elaine was just 21. 4 years later, Steve's father passed away suddenly, leaving behind a series of bingo halls on the East Coast and a mountain of debt. Steve could have walked away and gone to law school as planned, built a quiet, respectable life, but that wasn't Steve Wynn, and Elaine didn't just support him when he took over the bingo parlors. She worked by his side, learning the business from the ground up. She learned what kept people gambling, what brought them back, and most importantly, how to make them feel like tonight could be the night that changed everything. Imagine Elaine, just 21, a college graduate with a bright future ahead, working a bingo hall in Maryland. She wasn't just watching, she was absorbing. She understood that hospitality wasn't just about keeping customers happy, it was about creating an experience. Yet even when the chairs were worn and the carpet frayed, people didn't gamble for the money alone, they gambled for the community, the hope that tonight could be different. If she could create that feeling in a bingo hall, think about what she could do in Las Vegas. They paid off the debt, but more importantly, they had learned to work as a team. Steve dreamed big. Elaine made those dreams real. In 1967, with just a few $1,000s and their daughter Kevin in tow, they drove west to Las Vegas, a city still figuring out what it could become. Picture Las Vegas in 1967. It wasn't the glamorous strip we know today. It was a place of mob money and neon cowboys, a town where fortunes changed hands at 3 a.m. and no one asked where the money came from. The Golden Nugget, located downtown on Fremont Street, was the heart of the action before the strip overtook the city. Elaine, at 25, a young mother, felt out of place at first, too middle class, too traditional for a town that thrived on excess and secrecy. But her Miami Beach upbringing had prepared her for this world. The flash, the hustle, and the knowledge that beneath the glitz, it was all business. Steve bought a 3% stake in the Frontier Hotel for $75,000, which gave them a foothold. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 1972, Steve purchased stock in the Golden Nugget. and by 1973, at just 31 years old, he became the chairman and president. That's when Elaine truly began her work. Steve was the dreamer, the risk-taker, the one who saw possibilities where others saw limitations. But Elaine was the one who made those dreams feel real. She understood that luxury wasn't just about marble and gold, it was about making people feel special. Elaine walked into the Golden Nugget and saw what others didn't, a casino that could cater to a new audience. She knew that women controlled household budgets and that couples wanted vacations together. If she could make the casino inviting to women, they could double their customer base. So she revamped the design, lighter colors, elegant fabrics, professional uniforms, and little touches like fresh flowers and better lighting to make the place feel gracious, not stuffy. She also trained the staff personally, teaching them that hospitality meant seeing people, remembering their names, and making everyone, whether high roller or a couple celebrating with just $20, feel like they mattered. Together, they transformed the Golden Nugget into a place that blended elegance with Vegas grit. In 1977, it became the first hotel in Las Vegas to receive a 4-diamond rating from the Mobile Travel Guide, and that wasn't Steve, that was Elaine. But even in those golden years, cracks began to appear. Steve was brilliant, but his brilliance came with sharp edges. The 1980s saw Vegas changing, the mob was being pushed out, corporate money was moving in, and Steve had a vision that would reshape the Strip. He wanted to build a resort that was more than just a casino and hotel. It would be a destination, an experience so grand people would fly from all over the world to see it. They called it the Mirage, 65 acres on the Strip, 3,000 rooms, a tropical theme with an aquarium wall and a 54-foot volcano that erupted every night. It cost $630 million to build, the most expensive resort in the world at the time, and everyone thought Steve was insane. Vegas was overbuilt, they said. Who needed another casino? But when the Mirage opened in 1989, it didn't just succeed, it created an entirely new category of resort, where the spectacle was just as important as the gambling. Elaine was there for all of it. While Steve focused on raising money and negotiating deals, Elaine was the one choosing the coral for the guest room walls, testing fabrics, and walking the property at 2 a.m., asking herself if every detail made people feel something. She designed the aquarium wall, insisted on real tropical plants, and made sure the volcano's eruptions were timed perfectly to build anticipation without annoying guests. Elaine's touch gave the Mirage its soul, and there's a story that perfectly illustrates this. Steve wanted to put a dolphin habitat behind their house, but Elaine convinced him to move it to the Mirage instead, making it part of the experience for everyone. That was Elaine, always thinking about how to make people feel something. But in 1986, the year before the Mirage opened, Elaine and Steve divorced after 23 years of marriage. They still worked together, still built the Mirage together. In 1991, they remarried. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale, but inside, the reality was more complicated than anyone knew. In 1993, after the opening of Treasure Island, their daughter Kevin was kidnapped at gunpoint. Steve paid the ransom alone, terrified that if he involved anyone, they'd kill her. When Kevin was found safe, only then did Steve tell Elaine, and the trauma of that moment didn't disappear overnight. For Elaine, discovering what had happened after the fact shook her to the core. Steve had carried the burden alone. That was who he was. But that moment, that trauma, would be just one of many defining chapters in the saga of Elaine Wynn, one that would eventually lead her to reclaim the power she had always deserved. He carried that burden alone, not because he didn't trust her, but because that had become who he was, the man who controlled everything and couldn't share the load, even when it could break him. By then, Kevin had her own children, Elaine's grandchildren. The kidnappers didn't just take a daughter, they took a mother and a granddaughter. For hours, Elaine didn't even know. She later confided in friends that the whole ordeal changed something between her and Steve. It didn't alter the love they shared, but it deepened her understanding of what partnership meant in Steve's world. In his eyes, partnership meant he made the tough decisions and she made them beautiful. And sometimes those decisions were about their children's lives. Forgiving that was one thing, forgetting was another. Then came Bellagio, opening on October 15, 1998. $1.6 billion, the world's most expensive hotel at the time. Steve initially wanted to call it Beau Rivage, inspired by French Mediterranean elegance, but Elaine persuaded him to visit Lake Como in Italy to see the village of Bellagio. The stunning architecture, the beauty, the romance, this was the vision. Steve scrapped 10 months of design work and started fresh. The Bellagio wasn't just another casino, it was a statement. Vegas could be sophisticated, a cultural, a place where you didn't have to apologize for staying. Elaine commissioned Dale Chihuly to create the Fiori di Como, a 2,000-square-foot glass flower installation hanging from the lobby ceiling. When she first saw Chihuly's work at his home, she knew it had to be part of Bellagio's design. No committees, no focus groups, just a woman with exquisite taste and the power to make it happen. Elaine also opened the Bellagio Gallery of Fine Art with pieces from Steve's private collection, Picasso, Monet, Van Gogh. She understood that Vegas didn't have to choose between glamour and culture, it could be both. But that wasn't all. Elaine didn't just add art to a casino, she was reshaping what Las Vegas could be. For decades, the city had been seen as entertainment for the masses, spectacle without substance. Elaine wanted to challenge that narrative. She created the Bellagio Conservatory, a 25,000-square-foot botanical garden that changed with the seasons. Spring brought cherry blossoms and tulips, summer saw tropical flowers bloom, fall turned it into an autumn forest, and winter transformed it into a wonderland. Millions of visitors came to see the gardens, many without spending a single dollar in the casino. Elaine knew luxury wasn't about price tags, it was about making people feel transported, as though they'd stepped into something magical. In 1999, she was inducted into the Gaming Hall of Fame for her groundbreaking contributions to the industry. But here's the thing about building an empire. It's never really yours, not when someone else holds the reins. In 2000, Mirage Resorts was sold to MGM Grand for $6.6 billion, and the company Elaine had helped build from the ground up was gone. Steve used the proceeds to start over, founding Wynn Resorts in 2002. He took it public, built Wynn Las Vegas, the most expensive resort ever built at $2.7 billion, and Elaine was there, a co-founder, a board member, and the largest shareholder after Steve. Macau opened in 2006, Encore followed in 2008. Every property bore Elaine's signature, her sense of grace and understanding that luxury lies in the details. But beneath the success, their marriage was unraveling. By 2010, their second divorce was finalized. They had been married twice, divorced twice, built 2 empires, raised 2 daughters, survived a kidnapping, and now it was over. But in the corporate world, divorce doesn't mean separation, not when you're both on the board of a publicly traded company. They drew up a shareholders' agreement. Steve would control Elaine's voting rights, and though she still owned the stock and collected dividends, she couldn't vote independently. Why? To maintain control of the company. Even after their marriage ended, the Wynn family would continue to run Wynn Resorts. Elaine signed, but that signature would haunt her for the next 8 years. Behind closed doors, things were taking a darker turn. In 2009, Elaine discovered that a manicurist at Wynn Las Vegas had been paid $7.5 million to settle claims that Steve had forced her to have sex in his office back in 2005. Elaine immediately raised the alarm with a board representative, but nothing happened. The board knew and did nothing. Meanwhile, Elaine's questions at board meetings became more frequent, more pointed. She pushed for better corporate governance, but Steve wasn't having it. One moment encapsulated the tension. Elaine asked a question during a board meeting, just a question, as any director would. Steve slammed his fist on the table and shouted at her in front of everyone, "No more stupid questions." In February 2015, the board's nominating committee made a decision. They would not renominate Elaine for another term. After 13 years on the board, she was out. Their reasoning? Her lawsuit to regain control of her shares created a conflict of interest. Elaine launched a proxy fight, using her own money to campaign for shareholders to keep her on the board. She was the third largest shareholder, a co-founder, and had 48 years of experience in the industry. But on April 24, 2015, she lost. The shareholders voted her out, replacing her with two men, both close to Steve. The woman who had shaped the aesthetic of every Wynn property was no longer welcome in the boardroom. But Elaine didn't walk away. She sued. She fought for her voting rights, documenting every instance of governance failure. For 3 years, she battled in court while Steve controlled the company they'd built. She was dismissed as a bitter ex-wife, and she watched the company make decisions she disagreed with while unable to stop them. Then, in January 2018, everything exploded. The Wall Street Journal published an investigation revealing decades of sexual misconduct by Steve Wynn, sexual harassment, coercion, assault. The 2009 manicurist settlement confirmed. But there was more. Massage therapists, salon workers, and other women who said they'd been pressured, threatened, or assaulted. And the board? They claim they never knew that Elaine had reported the 2009 discovery to a board representative. That was a lie. Court documents revealed that Elaine had immediately informed the board, but the representative, whether out of loyalty, fear, or complicity, hadn't escalated the matter. For 9 years, Steve had continued to run the company, earning $28 million a year while women suffered in silence. Steve denied everything, calling the allegations preposterous, accusing Elaine of orchestrating a smear campaign to get more money in the divorce. But the evidence was undeniable. On February 6, 2018, just 11 days after the article was published, Steve Wynn resigned as CEO and chairman of Wynn Resorts and sold his 12% stake in the company for $2.1 billion. And now it was Elaine's moment. With Steve gone, the shareholders' agreement no longer held up. Steve paid Elaine $25 million and returned her voting rights. After 8 years, she could finally vote her 9% stake independently. She became the largest shareholder. Elaine could have walked away, taken her $2 billion and retired. She could have focused on philanthropy or art. But instead, she didn't leave. This wasn't about revenge. It was about something deeper. It was about a company she had helped build, being run by men who had enabled a predator, men who had protected their friend instead of the women he'd harmed. Elaine launched Restore Wynn, targeting John Hagenbuck, a longtime board member and Steve's close friend, someone who had been on the committee investigating Steve's misconduct. The board had appointed Steve's friend to investigate him. It was absurd, a mockery of corporate governance. Elaine wasn't asking for a board seat, she just wanted Hagenbuck gone. She wanted the board to be refreshed with independent directors who hadn't been part of the culture that had enabled Steve. This took not only courage, but strategic precision. Elaine spent months preparing. She hired lawyers who specialized in proxy fights, studied securities law, and learned the language of shareholder activism. She built a coalition with institutional investors, pension funds, and hedge funds. She couldn't win with just her 9%, but she did it, even as she was dismissed as a disgruntled ex-wife. Elaine had something none of them did: credibility. She co-founded the company, built the properties, and witnessed firsthand how the board protected Steve for years. She had the receipts, and she knew exactly how to use them. In interviews, she remained calm, measured, and reasonable, never angry or vengeful. She simply presented herself as a shareholder advocating for what was best for the company she helped create. The proxy advisory firms did their homework, reading the documents, interviewing the key players, and came to the same conclusion. Elaine was right. When Wynn Resorts fought back, calling her a disgruntled ex-wife and dismissing her concerns as personal animosity, something had shifted. The Me Too movement was rewriting the rules. Shareholders were fed up with boards that protected powerful men at the expense of employees and investors. All three major proxy advisory firms, Institutional Shareholder Services, Glass Lewis, and Egan Jones, recommended withholding votes from John Hagenbuck, a board member loyal to Steve. The annual meeting was set for May 16, 2018. 2 days before the vote, Hagenbuck withdrew, citing that he didn't want to be a distraction. Robert Miller, the longest-serving director, followed suit and resigned as well. The shareholders had spoken and the message was clear. The old guard was finished. Elaine had won, not with charm or diplomacy, but with relentless determination and a strategic use of every tool at her disposal: her shares, the media, and the proxy process. She had been erased from the boardroom in 2015, dismissed as a troublemaker, silenced for asking questions. But 3 years later, she orchestrated a governance revolution that shook corporate America. But the real story of Elaine Wynn goes beyond proxy fights, boardroom battles, and headlines. She was a woman who believed in the power of education. Elaine saw that Nevada had one of the highest dropout rates in the country, and she decided to take action. She knew firsthand how education could change lives. Her own degree from George Washington University had opened doors for her. Knowledge was the one thing no one could take away. In 1993, the same year her daughter was kidnapped, Elaine co-founded Communities in Schools of Nevada, an organization focused on keeping at-risk students in school by providing support services. She didn't just write checks, she showed up. She visited schools, talked to kids, and listened to teachers working with little resources. Elaine learned that some students dropped out because they were hungry, lacked glasses to read the blackboard, or were dealing with trauma at home. Our communities and schools provided food, healthcare, counseling, everything a child needed to focus on learning instead of just surviving. Under her leadership, the program expanded to support over 1.7 million students in 2,900 schools across 26 states. Elaine also chaired the UNLV Foundation for 8 years, focusing not just on raising money, but on changing who had access to higher education. She created the Elaine Wynn Valedictorian Scholarships because the smartest students shouldn't be held back by their inability to afford tuition. In 1991, an elementary school in Las Vegas was named after her, the Elaine Wynn Elementary School. In 2011, Nevada's governor appointed her co-chair of the Blue Ribbon Education Reform Task Force, which helped develop the Nevada's Promise Report, advocating for teacher evaluations, performance-based pay, and other education reforms. From 2013 to 2020, Elaine served on the Nevada State Board of Education and was elected president twice. She wasn't just a philanthropist, she was a woman who understood that power came with responsibility, that wealth was meaningless unless you used it to uplift others. Then there was Elaine's love of art. She was one of the world's great collectors. In 2013, she paid $142.4 million at Christie's for 3 studies of Lucian Freud by Francis Bacon, at the time the highest price ever paid for a work of art at auction. But the purchase wasn't about flaunting wealth. It was about her belief that art matters. She loaned it to the Portland Art Museum so people who could never afford to bid at Christie's could see it in person. Art for Elaine wasn't decoration, it was transformation. It was about creating something lasting, something that would live on after the artist and the collector were gone. She eventually bequeathed the piece to LACMA, ensuring that future generations would experience it. Elaine was deeply involved in LACMA's expansion, pledging $50 million, and she was appointed to the Kennedy Center Board by President Obama. In her final years, she worked with Las Vegas Mayor Carolyn Goodman to establish the Las Vegas Museum of Art, which is set to open in 2028. Her vision was to turn Las Vegas into a cultural destination, not just for gambling, but for art and beauty. Elaine elevated everything she touched. On April 14, 2025, Elaine Wynn passed away at 82 years old from heart failure at her home in Los Angeles. She was surrounded by her daughters, Kevin and Jillian, and her 7 grandchildren. The Elaine Wynn and Family Foundation announced her death, describing her as a force of nature, a curator of dreams in a city built on aspirations. Elaine had co-founded 2 casino empires, helped transform the Las Vegas Strip from mob-run gambling joints into world-class resorts, was inducted into the Gaming Hall of Fame, and led education reform efforts. She had raised hundreds of millions for scholarships and arts programs, survived 2 divorces, and fought corporate battles that led to one of the most successful shareholder activism campaigns in U.S. history. She was the Queen of Las Vegas, but that title doesn't fully capture her complexity. She was refined and ruthless, gracious and fierce. A woman who could discuss Renaissance art in one moment and orchestrate a corporate takedown in the next. She paid $142 million for a painting and gave $50 million to build a museum. She designed hotel lobbies that took your breath away and boardrooms where she made grown men sweat. For decades, she lived in Steve Wynn's shadow, watching him take credit for visions they created together, for properties she designed, and for the shift from old Vegas to modern Vegas that she helped bring about. But when the allegations against Steve came to light, Elaine didn't gloat. She didn't leak documents or go on television. Instead, she used corporate governance tools, proxy votes, shareholder letters, and SEC filings. She didn't seek revenge, she sought reform, and she achieved it. Elaine's story teaches us about power in Las Vegas. The city has always been built on partnerships between mobsters, bankers, and executives, but when history is written, the focus is often on the man at the top. Elaine Wynn spent her life alongside one of those men, helping to create the vision, making it real, and ensuring that every detail was filled with grace. She was the grounding force, the one who turned Steve's dreams into experiences people actually wanted, until that partnership became a prison. Until questions were silenced, misconduct was ignored, and she was pushed out. That's when Elaine showed the world who she really was, a boardroom warrior who understood power better than the men who tried to control her. Elaine Wynn didn't just build resorts, she built a legacy. She didn't walk away from the table until she was ready, and in the end, she won. Her name lives on in the Elaine Wynn Elementary School, the LACMA Wing, and the Las Vegas Museum of Art. And her legacy is the precedent she set, that even when you're erased from the story, you can still write the ending. Elaine Wynn didn't just build casinos, she built something far more enduring, an empire of grace, power, and reform. And in a city where fortunes rise and fall, it's the legacy that lasts. Every legend in Vegas has a defining moment. For Bugsy, it was the Flamingo. For Steve, it was the Mirage. For Elaine, it was the moment she stood in that courtroom in 2016, fighting for her rights, not with glamour, but with grit. She showed that you can lose the hand and still win the game, and she did it her way. Elaine Wynn's story will be remembered not just in the glitz of Vegas, but in the hearts of every woman who has ever been told to sit down and be quiet and decided to stand up and fight instead. Want more stories like this? Subscribe now to get the latest updates delivered straight to your inbox. Don't miss out on the tales of power, wealth, and mystery that shape our world. Hit that subscribe button and stay in the know.